I have the honor of introducing our next speaker, Dr. Ann Becker, and she is the Maud and Lillian Presley Professor of Global Health and Social Medicine at Harvard Medical School. It's a small school where, I think, at Harvard Medical School, where she also serves as Vice Chair of the Department of Global Health and Social Medicine and as a Senior Associate Director of the Harvard MIT MD PhD program. An anthropologist and psychiatrist, Dr. Becker has combined anthropologic and other qualitative and epidemiological methods in her research to focus on the impact of social and cultural environment on mental health and on eating disorders in particular. She is the author of an incredible study, Body, Self, and Society, The View from Fiji, which probes the cultural mediation of self-agency and body experience. And she was the lead investigator on a series of studies demonstrating the relationship between media exposure and eating pathology in a small-scale indigenous population in Fiji. In addition to all of that, Dr. Becker's NIMH-funded research has investigated the impact of rapid economic and social transition on eating pathology, suicide, and other youth health risk behaviors among teenage girls in Fiji. Dr. Becker is the founding and past director of the Eating Disorders Clinical and Research Program at Massachusetts General Hospital, an associate editor of the International Journal of Eating Disorders. She is the past president of the Academy for Eating Disorders, and she has served as a member of the American Psychiatric Association DSM-5, which is a classification manual on eating disorders work group. She received the Price Family Award for Research Excellence from the National Eating Disorders Association in 2013. Now, how did she get to all of that? She received her bachelor's degree in anthropology from Harvard College. She was summa cum laude. She received her medical training at Harvard Medical School and received a doctoral degree in anthropology from the Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences as part of a joint MD PhD program in social sciences supported by the MacArthur Foundation. She has also received a Master of Science degree in epidemiology from the Harvard School of Public Health. Dr. Becker completed her residency in the Department of Psychiatry at the Massachusetts General Hospital in 1994, and it is my pleasure to introduce you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and it is such a privilege for me to be speaking to you today about our research findings in Fiji. And I'll be talking about a couple of studies, a series of studies on the impact of television exposure, media exposure on Fijian girls. And you're probably hearing Fiji, which is located, and I checked, 7,764 miles from where we are today. And you're wondering, what does this small-scale indigenous population and their reaction to TV have to do with all of us in this room? And I want to just start by saying that Fiji was one of the last places on this planet to get TV, and the story of what happened to teenage girls there after that is a cautionary tale for all of us. Before I get to that story, I want to express my huge thanks to my collaborators, and in particular to funders, and single out the National Institute of Mental Health, which supported most of this work. I'm going to give you a very quick tour to research that has taken place over about 25 years in Fiji, and I want to divide that tour up into 3 chapters. So let me start with chapter 1 and tell you a little bit about, well, first of all, where's Fiji? There it is, pretty remote, as you can see. And the Fijians have been in this remote island for about 2,000, 3,000 years maybe, kind of minding their own business. And then in the mid-1990s, electricity came, television came to the villages. But before that, Fijians were a subsistence agriculture society. Their values surrounded a healthy community, communal living, sharing of food, healthy, robust, strong, well-fed bodies. And the body ideal was almost the opposite of what we have come to know as the ideal here in this society. It was robust and strong. Children in Fiji, adults in Fiji, didn't have eating disorders. They seemed to be virtually resistant to eating disorders, and that got our attention. What was different about Fiji, and what could we learn from them? But then in the mid-1990s, as I said, television came to Fiji, and within just 3 years, we had ominous signs of eating disorders developing among teenage girls there in a place, I remind you, that had been around for about 3,000 years, minding its own business. Okay, what are some of the data? Well, the first thing we did was we were working in Fiji in 1995 when the government announced that TV was going to be broadcast. So we thought, this is an opportunity to show how resilient the Fijian girls are. So we did a quick study. It's a multi-wave cohort study. In 1995, we looked at a group of girls in a school, and then in 1998, we looked at another group of girls, the same school, same ages, same ethnic Fijian girls. The only difference between these two groups was that the group in 1998 had been exposed to TV for 3 years. And as you can see, although in the first group, the unexposed to TV group, we found no cases of purging to control weight, by 1998, 11% of the girls in our study had purged to control weight. 11%. That is what I would have expected to find at the time in a Massachusetts secondary school. They had gone from 0 to 60, apparently, in just 3 years. Now, a lot of other things were happening in Fiji around this time, and we really wanted to drill down on this. Was it TV? Were there other things? And what about TV? What about the images? And so we really wanted to hear from the girls themselves who were participating in the study what the impact had been. And I want to give you just a few examples, and I could go on and on, but the gist of it was that they admired the actresses, they saw the thin bodies, and they wanted to be that way too. Now, what were they watching on TV? Well, they're watching this, I don't know if we can get it to play, Shortland Street. This is a soap opera. I don't know if it's just music that's playing. You don't have to hear anything. It's utterly mundane, utterly routine. But the girls were studying the actresses, studying the actors in this. And they said things like this: I like Shortland Street because of the many young adults involved with it. I want to be like that. I want to imitate them, the way they live, the food they eat, and also the ideas they have. Another show they liked. You know, X-Files. And look at this. X-Files gives me ideas of how to solve problems when being in this world. Okay, really? You know, when's the last time you took your advice from X-Files? But the point here is that the girls in our study didn't know that these images were contrived and heavily edited. They didn't know they were fictional. And even if they did, even if the stories like Shortland Street seemed kind of true to life, they didn't know how far apart from real life they were. And they were taking them as fact. So they said things like, we look at these characters, they're all thin, they have the same figure, we want to be like that too. And of course, the sad and tragic outcome was that we started to see eating disorder behaviors emerge. Okay, that was chapter 1. What's chapter 2? Well, after that, we started to get very concerned about something we had heard in our data, and that was that the girls said that they were copying one another, and that it wasn't necessarily them sitting in front of TV, but it was their friends' comments that seemed to be really, really powerful. And we got to think, maybe it's not just you in front of a TV, not just the end user. Maybe it's the fact that all your friends watch TV. And yet we looked in the literature, and no one's really measured that. I mean, most of the studies do show, right? The aggregate data show that there's a relationship between media exposure and eating pathology, but we don't really know what the collateral impact is. And the reason we don't know is that in order to measure an impact of exposure, we need to have some variability. And guess what? We live in a TV-saturated society. So does almost everybody in the world, but not in Fiji. So actually, in Fiji, we could do this natural experiment again. And what we did here is we took advantage of this unique geopolitical context of Fiji, where, you know, on one end, you have people, these are women and men who are who've constructed a human chain to catch their fish for dinner in a village. And down the road, you know, maybe an hour away, people are getting their dinner at McDonald's. So you have this tremendous variation in infrastructure, access to electricity, access to TV, and you can actually show the variable impact of the indirect exposure to TV, the secondhand exposure, or the innocent bystander effect. So this is what we did. With the Ministry of Education's help, we went around to all the schools within a certain district, and these schools were very different in terms of how much access they had to roads, TV, internet, etc. So we were able to measure variability. And we recruited a very large representative sample of over 500 girls. And the first thing we found, distressingly, remember I told you that 11% purging in the last study? Oh, let me break for a minute.
Absolutely. To hear from the Congresswoman.